Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Data Faces podcast. I'm David Sweenor, founder of TinyTechGuides and your host for today's show. On this show, we explore the human stories behind data analytics, AI, and marketing, the people shaping how technology really gets used in business. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Eric Kavanagh. He's an AI analyst, syndicated radio host of DM Radio, and a longtime observer of the data-driven enterprise. He's spent decades understanding how AI fits into the broader technology stack, not as a magic bullet, but as a force multiplier. So today we're going to talk about the end goal of AI. Could it be technology? Could it be societal, economic? That will be the topic of today's discussion. So let's jump in. Eric, welcome to the Data Faces podcast.
Hey, thanks so much, man. Congratulations on all your success. This is a lot of fun.
Well, you know, I'm pale in comparison to you. I was looking at your LinkedIn profile. It says 2,000 podcasts. And radio shows and webinars since 2005. So I'd like to could you introduce yourself a little bit about, what you're doing and how did you arrive to what you're doing? Sort of a non-standard career path.
Yeah, well, you know what? 20 odd years ago, I helped the Data Warehousing Institute launch their webinar program, TDWI. I still do work with them. In fact, I'll be in Orlando in November speaking, bringing DM Radio Roadshow to their events. And it's a fantastic organization. I learned a lot about data, and I really connected with a lot of data people, including folks like Mark Madsen, Wayne Eckerson, Philip Russum, a lot of the stalwarts of the analyst industry. And that was the door opening. And I told the wife, honey, we got to go. We got to move to Seattle. This is going to open doors for us. And I'd already been a journalist and focused on tech for a number of years. I was a journalist right out of college. But in 2000, I moved to New York to do the .com thing. That fell apart. I moved to Austin to work for a BI consultancy called Damon Consulting. And that's when I got into data. And frankly, I'd always wanted to do a radio show, probably because of Eric Idle and his little joking shows from Monty Python, nudge, nudge, wink, wink,
Sure,
know what I mean?
sure.
Know what I mean?
Yeah.
All that stuff. And so I was like, man, it looks like a cool job. So I just dove in and have been asking questions ever since.
Wow, that's amazing. And so this is a bit of an off-topic question, but since you host a radio show, when you listen to things do you listen to like streaming or do you listen to radio these days?
I listen to radio when I'm in the car, not too much at home. Most of the time I just read, to be honest. I'm still a reader in terms of absorbing information, lots of headlines, lots of research. And of course, these days with ChatGPT and these other large language models, you can dive down wormholes all day and all kinds of different angles and just have it auto-populated for you. And of course, you have to watch out. These are probabilistic models. So if you're kind of straying off to fringe territory, sort of low distribution areas of the interwebs, then you'll get some wacky stuff coming out. But for most technology questions, most stuff that has been widely published about, these engines are pretty good at giving you answers. So the whole game of research is now on demand. Basically, you can learn whatever you want as long as you want to invest the time to do that. And that's what I do to just try to stay on top of things. I mean, goodness gracious, lately we've been getting into the infrastructure domain, better understanding what's going on there. And there's a lot to understand and there's a lot to optimize. You talk about this world of AI. I think that we're in this sort of ready, fire, aim mode. Many companies are pulling the trigger on programs. And that's why you're seeing 80% failure rates, 95% failure rates.
Right.
People didn't really think through what they were trying to do with this stuff. So I think that's where the attention needs to be focused these days is take a deep breath, figure out what are we trying to accomplish with these things? What are the cost models? But, the challenge, David, is that the ground keeps shaking. These new models keep coming out. I mean, look at ChatGPT with version 5, where they're like, nope, this is the version you're using. Too bad. And people are like, what? Like, wait a second. So there's a lot of lessons being learned and there's a lot of money being talked about and thrown around, and it is being thrown around, but it's kind of fuzzy in terms of who's going to do what. You may have seen this recent thing with OpenAI and AMD and Sami Akbe, in fact, of Insight Software, an old friend of mine, was posting about it online today, and someone came up with a little back and forth between them about what the deal is, and it's like, well, what is the deal exactly? We don't really know. Like who. It actually reminds me of 2000 when I moved to New York for the dot-com phase, w- there was so much money being thrown around for the dot-com craze, the dot-com boom, that it just all bets were off. And I remember sitting in meetings twice in New York City in the Empire State Building where I had to
Right.
actually ask a question like, okay, so in this conversation, are we talking about money going from you to us or from us to you?
Yeah,
We're
it's pretty confusing, Eric. I mean, and then to your point, the technology is changing so fast, and like you have these startups today, and then next thing you know, that capability's in ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, and that company's lost any sort of uh, advantage it may have had. So I find it interesting. But when you talk about sort of the end goal or end game for AI, what does success look like to you in business, society, and technology?
Yeah, well, let's start with business. I think right now the end game is personal productivity. Right
Mhm.
now, every person can become more efficient by using AI, but you have to know where and when to use it. So I'll mention Sammy again from Insight. He was talking about Manus, how he uses Manus all the time. He
Right.
uses Claude. He uses a whole bunch of these different tools constantly to test things out, to play around with code. He's as an executive in the software industry, so he thinks about these things. And Manus is really interesting, but you got to know where and when to use it. So I asked it to find airline tickets for my wife so that she can go with me on a trip to New Orleans for another event, for Confluent, in fact. And I watched how it worked. And it was interesting because you can tell there are some use cases where it's really not optimal. I mean, but still booking plane tickets is kind of a pain. It takes a while. You have to like
Right.
sort through, like, okay, wait for this, wait for that, and check things. And but I was wildly faster myself doing things the old-fashioned way than Manus was, and Manus came up with a price that was twice as much as mine. So,
Okay.
it doesn't do everything well, but it does some things well. I think mostly it's research. So that's business right now. It's personal optimization of your time, of
Right.
your productivity. So business, life, I mean, education. I wonder what's going to happen to higher education, quite frankly,
Yeah.
because what are you paying for? People are paying crazy amounts of money. I know some of these millennials and Gen Zers that are just sitting on massive debt, wondering what the heck's going to happen, especially as white collar jobs theoretically go away. I don't really think that's going to happen. I think what's going to happen here is we're going to have just a new playing field of tools and technologies to use to do our jobs. And the people who learn how to use these are going to be at the forefront of doing cool work. But I do think that the traditional organizational hierarchies are going to collapse. I think it's
Yeah.
already happening.
Agreed.
Look at a company like Uber, where most of the people who work there never even encounter management at all.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So you have this bifurcation of all the workers and then all the executives over here, which you might argue is bad, but I don't know. Like the fact is, the traditional hierarchies are going to collapse. It's already happening. So that's the life side. And then technology, it's fascinating, but again, it's moving so fast that I wouldn't want to be a CIO these days. I'd be
I
concerned
know.
to be a CIO.
Hmm. Interesting. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack there in what you said, but I'm curious. Do you think from like an industry perspective, medicine or law or defense or what have you, you think what they'll be sort of lagging in that, what's the last bastion where humans are going to continue to be central and you sort of dominate, and why is that?
It's a good question. I think that humans will always be central and will always dominate. It's just a question of which technologies they use. I heard a really interesting stat just the other day on medical recommendations, and apparently there's some study that says that AI is getting it wrong like 50% of the time. And so doctors have to be careful about how they leverage these technologies,
Right.
but there are tremendous amounts of information available to educate the human, and that's really what it boils down to, is that the humans still need to make important decisions, but they need to use the machines to get there. But you talked about law. I mean, I wonder if there's going to be AI judges and juries in the relatively near future. I'm very serious about that because, first of all, there's this crazy backlog of cases, especially in civil courts, but also in criminal courts. And my theory is that in a few years, you'll start to see some front runners do this. You'll be able to choose AI judge and jury or real judge and jury. And my recommendation is if you're guilty, go with the real judge and jury. If you're innocent, go with the machines.
Well, you got to be careful because there are all these biases in law, and you see, these studies. Hey, well, if you're on trial, right before lunch, you're
right,
you're X likely to be more likely to be convicted because everybody's hungry,
right.
and
I mean, this is real.
that
Like that's
degrades during the day.
right. Well, that's a very interesting observation that you make, and it speaks to the the clumsy nature of the processes that we have in place today. And it's all over the place. It's in hospitals, it's in courtrooms, it's in police stations, but the humans still have to maintain control, and you use the machines to help you to make determinations. But thinking that AI is going to run everything is crazy, and thinking that humans are going to run everything without AI is also crazy. I think that the AI now is everywhere. I think what I call for more than anything is transparency, and
Sure.
that's transparency of models. I think that maybe the government should act. Maybe the government should come out and say, if you're especially for large organizations, maybe you have like this often happens in terms of regulation, a certain size and over. If you're building AI solutions, I think you need to be transparent about which models you're using, what the training data was. And there's a proprietary aspect here where companies will say, well, that's our secret sauce. I understand that. But when you're talking about algorithms that make very important decisions for things like banking or healthcare or other life-threatening situations, we need transparency. Because and it's like, I think this, the big models, even the people who design them, don't know exactly how they work.
Well, that's my question to you. So I agree with you in principle, Eric, but like these giant models that are out there, we don't know what's in them. I don't know if we'll ever know. I mean,
Well,
we know it scraped up the entire
right,
internet, and
right.
without regard for property rights and all of
Sure.
that, stuff. But can we ever really know what's in these things for training data?
That's a very interesting point. But here's what I'll say is that the unwieldy nature of them arguably stems from their complexity. And do we really need this complexity? We're seeing with the larger models that actually the error rates can go up.
Right.
And I think we should be careful about this and not maybe drink the Kool-Aid that's being put out there by the biggest players. And accept, I mean, there's some really weird stuff going on. I mean, there's one, I won't call them out by name, but you can research it, that keeps talking about how they're this safety company and they're doing these
Right.
tests where they told the model to only blackmail as a last resort. And I'm thinking, what on earth are you talking about? Like, first of all, is that just prompt engineering? Because I think that's what it is. I think it's prompt
Yeah, it's
engineering.
just expensive, prompt engineering and these guardrails. Hey, if this comes back with this, send it back. We're not going to accept that response.
Well, right. And so what are the guardrails? I mean, you and I both know it's very difficult to do that. And so I actually interviewed this young kid the other day, really smart guy, who was talking about how he got to play around with Grok 4. And he
Mhm.
said it was crazy. It was incredibly performant. It was doing amazing things. And what he wanted to do was to hack one of his smartphones to give it better energy, to have it like have the battery last
Right.
longer. He's a smart guy. I mean, this guy, and so with Grok, he was able to get detailed descriptions about how to unlock the phone, how to adjust the parameters, and all this stuff. He tried Google Gemini, and he said it just crap. It said it would not. No, it's dangerous. Don't do it.
Right.
So the guardrails were too stringent, and that clouds the answers, right? So it's like, well, what exactly are these guardrails? It's loosey goosey, and that's not good. That's you don't need a loosey goosey guardrail. You need a guardrail that's going to keep you from going off the road. That's the whole point of using that term guardrail. So I think that the size of these models is a challenge, and I think that we do need some transparency, and we need to put that into place somehow, some way, because letting these things run amok, it just sounds like a pretty bad idea. And it's always dangerous when you consolidate power in a handful of organizations. And
Mhm.
that's kind of what we've had. But you look at, talk about tumultuous times, look at Google, and talk about marketing, because you're a marketing guy.
Sure.
I mean, I think that the math I did said about $2 trillion have been paid to Google AdWords in the past 20 years. $2 trillion have gone into Google AdWords, which is a huge part of inbound marketing.
Right.
Companies would buy AdWords on
Sure.
Google to get their links to show up when people did keyword searches that align with them, and then you get traffic back to your site. Well, that's out the window now. And that is a huge disruption. I mean, I'm talking to people left and right, and it's funny because some people will be honest about it and some people won't. But I guarantee everyone's freaking out because web traffic for all these sites, what they call the organic web or whatever they're trying to refer to it as, is down. It's down significantly because ChatGPT gives you the answer. You don't have to go hunting for the answer now. It's just giving you the answer. And even though it's not always right, it's good enough for most people. So what does that mean? It means Google is in the crosshairs, man. I mean, wow.
Well,
Their empire is teetering right now. And so, it's like because remember how they kept saying they were going to kill cookies, third-party cookies. All right, it's going away. And they're like, all right, we changed our minds. It's too disruptive. And they pushed the boundaries back a couple times. And now guess what happened? The whole market changed under their feet. The carpet's been ripped out. And we're in a whole different AI generated world now, which is pretty bizarre.
It is. Well, and it's already pretty. I've seen these words. AI slop for some of the new image generating tools that are out there, and make these TikTok like social media things. I think Sora had one to be specific, but I feel like we're on the cusp of someone's going to figure out how to monetize these links in the LLM response, and it's like the total enshittification of all the output we get now. I think that's where we're headed because once you start putting ads in it and all that stuff that they're doing on the web, it's like I think the quality is going to degrade and be quite annoying for lots of people.
Well, you bring up a really good point. So I interviewed a very interesting guy who has a new site called Junto AI, and they're trying to make this a more focused and business friendly social media site like LinkedIn. And what he told me is very interesting. He said they researched all the major social platforms now, and he said every single one of them, the AI models are designed to optimize advertising revenue. And you can understand why. They're all trying to make money on stuff. But when the primary objective is just to make money and not to facilitate engagement between users, for example, or improve your chances of getting business deals or, various business-oriented outcomes, that tells you that you're probably on the wrong track. And, advertising does have a tendency to ruin things. I mean,
I think that was in the original Google paper. The original research paper said that it was like if there's advertising in there, it will be biased towards the advertisers. And it's like the original paper. So we're just going to repeat it, huh?
Well, it's funny too because I've been working a lot again with my buddy Mark Madsen of Third Nature, who was one of the TDWI instructors 20 odd years ago. A very, very smart guy, and he was pointing some of these things out as well and saying that. He made this really funny comment that was perhaps a slight dig on yours truly, but a friendly one, where he said, that a lot of these shows talk about what the vendors are doing, and that's a vendor view of the world, which is not the end user view of the world, because the end users are just trying to get stuff done, which they may do with this tool or with that tool. But there is a sort of side of the world that is produced or put out there by the vendor community, and it's always designed to help them sell, right? Which is fine, but still you have to take a more holistic view of your business. And this gets back to the end goal of AI, which is, all right, what are you going to do with this stuff? What is the business objective? And only once you have that clearly in your mind can you responsibly make decisions about which tools to make, which workflows to enable. One of the stats I heard the other day by another very interesting company, Data Squared, they apparently have the only patent for explainable AI. So that's kind of impressive. But he talked about how a lot of companies are stringing together large language model calls to create workflows. But the problem is there's an error rate at every step of the way. And when you multiply that out, the error winds up being like 40% or something. And it's like, all right, well, at what point, it's like when I was watching Manish try to book my wife's plane tickets, it's telling me, okay, now I'm clicking this button. Now I'm doing this. Now I'm doing that. I'm like, okay, I could have trained a monkey to do it faster than that. It was just it was just not so good.
I have been so unimpressed by these, we talk about AI agents, you watch them and I'm like, you're right. I could have clicked through and done it in like 5 seconds. I'm like, what is this thing doing? It's going off into the rabbit hole, into the ether somewhere. Like, why? I don't I don't understand it. And all of the use cases, they're like, I don't know, sort of boring to me. Like,
Hmm.
hey, you can manage your calendar. I'm like, really? Do I
Right,
need an agent to manage my calendar?
right,
We didn't need an agent to book this. I sent you a link, you picked the date, we showed up.
right.
You
That's
know,
right.
I think so. I don't know. Have you heard of any like cool, interesting use cases? I know you talk to people every week. But everything, all the demos are just sort of
Yeah, I think that in some areas, so we're working with a company, Sardine AI, that's doing some interesting stuff with agents, and the use cases I've heard about that sound very productive tend to be very focused, and they're doing tedious tasks. So in something like anti-money laundering, there are all these boxes you have to check
right.
as a provider to say that you did the right thing. So that's a series of automations that can make sense, and it can be dynamic in a certain sense because calls come in or certain things happen that are
Mhm.
unpredictable. So then you have to kind of walk through the process. And that in that use case, that makes a lot of sense because now the agent is just doing stuff that had to be done by a human, but doing it dynamically while the human is doing other things. So that gets kind of interesting. And for really complex use cases, I think that comes in handy. But again, you have to really think through what is the workflow? What is the end result? I mean, I think the old use cases are still the best. Classification, for example, what
Right.
class does this person come in? I mean, here's something that I've I've wanted forever and a day. How about a dynamic list segmentation algorithm for email marketing, where it's like, okay, I've scanned all the thousands of emails that I've sent. Who clicks on links
Right.
about analytics versus architecture? Well, that should be doable these days, but it's just hard to get to it. It's hard to build that out. And
Yeah.
right now, I mean, I think that if you look at the amount of money being spent on infrastructure, it's crazy. Like they've reached this point where now some states are even saying you can't build a data center unless you bring your own power, right? And so you're going
You
to
got to
have
build your own nuclear reactor to
right.
whatever state you're going
Well,
to.
in China, they can do that. So they're doing like
Right.
these like small nuclear reactors to get stuff rolling. But it's like, okay, China had problems too, like huge buildings and cities they'd
Yeah.
created that just are empty. And you're like, all right, what's actually going on? I don't know, but like I say, the end goal should always be some business value. Then you figure out, okay, can we build it ourselves? Do we use an off-the-shelf tool? Who should we use? And in that case, again, like find people who are generating value already that you can verify and then and sort it out. Experimentation, I think, is the key, right?
Yep.
Experiment,
Yep.
fail fast, fail faster. Just make sure you're paying attention to what you're doing and play around with stuff because I mean, there's so many tools, like you can't even play around with them all to know them all.
I know. I know there's so many. I do like, from a personal perspective, not business, but you can be anything you want now. You want to be an artist, you can use the image generating ones or
Yeah,
movies or whatever. You want to be a musician, you have to know how to, you can use AI to create some of those. So I think there's some pretty interesting thing. It allows everybody to unlock their creativity, and you don't have to have that innate
right.
talent to be able to play an instrument or paint something. I find that
Well,
interesting.
right. Well, so some of the smarter people I know are saying that really solid generalists will do best in this world because you can quickly learn the specifics of some task. Think about the McKinseys of the world, think about the Accentures, the Deloittes. They've made lots and lots of money over the years because they have people who have a lot of knowledge in their heads. Well,
Right.
most of that knowledge is now out in the wild. And
Right.
I'll throw out another bit of a gauntlet throwing down comment here and just say that arguably IP is kind of dead. Intellectual property is dead. Copyright is dead. I mean, de facto, if it's everywhere, you can still sue people if you want to
Right.
spend a bunch
Yeah.
of money on lawyers and court fees. But it's like, is there really value in that? And I don't think that the answer is yes. I think that really it's we're in the age of execution right now. The data is everywhere, the algorithms are everywhere. It's a question of applying them to your particular business to get something done. So I think that's the future is the age of execution.
Yeah. I do believe in that. But we were talking a little bit about guardrails earlier, and so I have this U.S. view because it's where I live in the world, and we're sort of ho hum about it for the most part, and we
Mhm.
have this asymmetry of power. But
Mhm.
like, what about the rest of the world? Like, you can't put that genie back in the bottle, I guess. Like,
Right.
there's other countries that have different motivations and morals and goals, compared to perhaps our view. And so, can you ever really rein this in for society as a whole? Because if someone's going to do it, we're going to have fraudsters do fraud things, but just that the idea of guardrails, is it even possible to contain?
That's a very, very good question. I think in general, guard rules are overrated. I think that they're very difficult to enforce. For example, I noticed a ChatGPT, or no, actually it was Gemini, was just having a fit over anything political. It's like, oh, that's a political. I don't touch it. Like, okay, give me a
Right.
break.
You got to use
ChatGPT,
Grok for that, right? Grok will just
right.
tell
Well,
you.
there you go. So to your point, people will go around it. So it's like, what are you really, saving yourself from? I don't know. I think guardrails in general are very difficult to deal with. It's like there's security. You either have access or you don't. You
Mhm.
either have access to the data or you don't, the system or you don't. That's old-fashioned governance, is just security. Like, do you have access or don't you?
Yeah.
But for a lot of these other use cases, like I'm saying, I think that, to your point, the cat's out of the bag. There's not a lot you're going to do about it. You can track things, but again, some of these stochastic systems are rather unwieldy, and the big ones are very unwieldy. So you're not going to be able to get to that 100% mark, or even that 98% mark. And for most business decisions, you need to be very sure about what you're doing. So I think that we are going to see a greater appreciation for core business solutions that are deterministic, and then probabilistic models that are facilitating decision making and doing things in the background or on the side. But you have to be careful not to mix those two. In other words, databases aren't going away,
Sure.
transactional systems aren't going away. They will be aided and abetted by these other systems, but there will be tremendous disruption. Think about doing your taxes, for example. I remember a few years ago, I thought to myself, why can't I just go into QuickBooks and do export as Schedule C? Why can't I
Right.
do that? Because it's all, these are restaurants, that's obviously travel. This is hotel, that's travel. These are, software as a service systems, like that's a business expense. Like, why all the trouble? And I can't answer the question. Like, I
Well,
don't know
because
why.
it's making them. I tell you what. I mean, I used Intuit, a couple years ago, and I filled it out, and they say we got this 100% guarantee, and I get this bill in the mail like 3 or 4 months later. It was like, say it was for like $100, like you owe us $100 in tax you didn't pay. I'm like, but TurboTax didn't say that, so the government already knows. So tax, don't get me started, Eric.
Wow.
Like it's so odd, but I think there was a lot of very interesting, like that minutia, those use cases, like everybody's talking about small language models now, and
Hmm.
very specific, narrowing the aperture on the use case as you just mentioned.
Yes.
Like, aren't we getting back to deterministic code if it if
Right.
the
I think
aperture it's
so.
it's so tiny?
I
Like, because
think
you
so.
mentioned those error rates, chained together, so you gotta like really
Right.
narrow opening for these things.
I think so. I think small language models, or just old-fashioned deterministic AI models, are going to be ruling the day. At least I hope so, because the big stuff is too big and it's unwieldy, and you can't trust it. Let's be honest. I mean, you
Yeah.
can't trust these big companies. There's no way. In fact, one of these, the guy I interviewed recently, said that someone out there went and did a test, an experimentation, to determine if OpenAI is in fact piggybacking on Google's indexing, which apparently they say they're not. And I haven't researched this thoroughly, but someone went and published a page like brand new and put on the tag that says don't index. And
Yep.
then on that page defined a new word. And then the next day or the day after went to ChatGPT and searched, and it found it, and it
Okay.
found his page. He's like, all right, how did you find
Right.
that page?
Right.
Like,
Right.
you got to
Right.
be piggybacking on something, right? So there are things happening under the covers, which, let's face it, as a regulator, how would you even test these things? I mean, think about going into the offices at OpenAI and saying, all right, well, let me see the system you're using. Like,
Right.
good
Yeah.
luck. There's no
Yeah.
way, dude. You can't survey all that. You can't analyze all that. It's just too much, man. So,
Yeah. Oh my
we'll
gosh.
see.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what do we think? What do you think the minimal, viable governing structure is? So we're business. We've decided what we want to do for a use case. We pick that. It's a high value use case. What do you think the MVP for on the governance side is for any company that's out there?
Audit logs, just audit logs. As long as you've got some log file that says what it did where. I mean, that's what all the AI agent companies are talking about doing, is just, okay, it'll log what it does, and that way you can go back and watch it. You have to be able to kill the pods, basically, that launch whatever,
Yep.
structure you have. You have to be able to stop something. You have to be able to say what it did and where, and then remediate. And that's basic governance. Data access to, what are you training it on? I will say one interesting comment I heard just yesterday. Someone was ragging on RAG, saying RAG,
Okay.
don't everyone's spending all this time and effort on RAG, and is it really worthwhile? Can agents do this stuff instead? Now, to your point, I haven't seen too much meat on the bones for agents really doing cool things. Like I said, in
Yeah.
some financial services areas, there seems to be some traction. Outside of that, not as much. But I think the agentic stuff, all bets are off. I mean, if someone really nails agentic AI, and of course, Salesforce is really pushing that,
Yep.
but a lot of companies are pushing it. Boomi is talking about their control tower. Lots of different vendors are, I mean, almost every vendor I can think of now has some story around agentic
Yeah.
AI,
They
which,
have to, right? It's you gotta have marketing parity for these companies.
right. Well, you have to say, oh, we're working on it too. It's like, okay, well, what are you doing? But to me, that could blow the whole thing wide open, because you think about data warehousing. That's where I came into this world. Big honking data warehouses, relational database models. You're loading all this data into the model so you can make decisions. Well, do you really have to do all that stuff anymore? I mean, Snowflake's not going away, obviously. Teradata is still around. I mean, there are big
Sure.
companies still doing data warehousing, but I wonder if the agentic stuff really takes off. Maybe you don't need these huge data lakes. Maybe you don't need these huge data warehouses to do your job anymore. But we'll see. It's pretty complicated. But I think that if someone really cracks the code on agentic, they're going to be the winner for the next 10 years at least.
Do you think that will be an incumbent, somebody that's there today, or somebody that maybe is emerging or not even born yet as a company? Do you?
It's hard to say. It's probably going to be a new company,
Yeah.
honestly. I mean, it could be a big one, but you know what it's like
You got 30
politically.
years of code and political and these silos. It's hard to get anything done really in some of the
And
larger companies. Yeah.
bureaucracy, people with their skin in the game, people who don't like these new ways of doing things. I mean, big companies, I think in general, are going to be in trouble for that reason. And yet, there are still all these critical tasks that need to get done. So if you just go fire people, well, what were those people doing? Like, is there nothing there? I mean, doesn't anyone have to come and fill in those gaps? And you see it. I mean, there are balls that get dropped, customers leave, all kind of stuff happens. That's the where the rubber really meets the road these
Mm,
days. You see it in big companies, you see it in telco, you see it in some of these big, internet service providers, the work that they do, and then what, it goes to court. We talked about that earlier.
yeah.
You'll be waiting for years to have something, and by the time the court date comes, you're like, why am I even here?
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So what do you think? What are we going to see this mass destruction of jobs, or do you think they're just going to just
I
change
don't
shape and
I don't
form?
think so.
I was
They're gonna
arguing with my son the other day. He's like, "Well, why do I need to learn this thing? Because a chat GPT can do it or whatever." I'm like, then I started thinking, I'm like, well, I know how to do long division, but I have a calculator here, Eric.
right,
I don't know when the last time I did long division is. Do I
right,
really need to know how to do it?
right,
I don't know. I
right.
don't know.
Right. I mean, it's an open question. I don't think there will be a huge collapse of jobs. I think that you are going to see companies getting smaller on average and more upstarts coming
Yeah.
along. And you're going to see people doing multiple jobs. You're going to see HR people also, engaging in some other activities around administration of the business. You're going to see marketing people working closer with salespeople, or salespeople that know more about marketing. I think that where there's supposed to be collaboration in the organization, it's going to be internalized into one person who has to do sales and marketing, or one person who has to do accounting and HR, for example, stuff like that. I think that's probably more likely, is that people will have to wear more hats, because there will be smaller companies with all the
Mhm.
same work that needs to get done. But you'll be more or less monitoring things more than doing things, which can be boring too. It's like, that's not
Right.
necessarily a fun development either. If I'm just watching the agents do all the cool stuff. What was the one joke someone said? Look, I want a robot to wash the dishes and do my laundry, not an AI to do my artwork for me.
Right,
Like,
right.
I want to do the artwork. I don't want to be the one just doing the laundry and the dishes.
Yeah, exactly. I do see that across, my clients. There are, people doing things that they wouldn't normally do, like, maybe tracking campaigns as an example.
Right.
They're campaign people. They know how to execute them. They know what content is needed and all that. They know how to set them up. They're like, oh, I can do the data analysis now myself. I don't have to go rely on some expert to do it. I can take data from here, here, and here,
Right.
jam it into the LLM and get some pretty interesting results and
Yeah.
refine my campaign now. So I do see
Right.
that multiple hats and people doing things they wouldn't have done 5 years ago.
Yeah. Well, that's true. And then talk about a wild western craziness out there, like the data from these systems. I've been doing email marketing for 25 years,
Right.
and the data used to be pretty clear cut. Now, I don't know. Like, are you sure that 80% of my people clicked on this? That number is pretty high. I'm pretty sure those are bots. But it's like, how do you determine that they're bots? Again, like things are changing so fast. How do you get to the bottom of things? It takes a process. It takes effort. It takes effort to normalize the data. I have my own little tricks for how I make sense of this data I'm seeing from my email marketing software, because it's like there are conversions and that I can tell, okay, I can tell this person registered because of this code.
Yep.
Apart from that, did the other people really open? Did they really click? I don't know. It's
No,
hard to
yeah,
say.
I see that too, and I publish regularly on over 100 articles on Substack, and there's some decent analytics there, and they're like, hey, all these people read your thing. I'm like, I am not sure. Like maybe because it was in my phone and I scrolled past it and it auto opened.
Right.
I think that's what they're measuring.
Right.
And then there's
Right.
email addresses in there that I know are not valid, but they haven't expunged these things yet. So like a lot of these, I don't have a huge following there, which is fine by me. I have a decent number of paying customers, but I see
Right.
these huge followings. You can buy lists, but it's crap. Likes don't equal buy. That's all
Right.
I know. Likes aren't buys.
Well, and then think about this, and I know we're coming up here at the near the end, but think about the number of times you clicked something on your phone that you didn't intend to, or for example on Twitter, and now it's called X, of course, but I think
Right.
they still have this metric of a digital expand. I'm like, a digital expand? What's that? And that's when you click on it and it expands out, and you look, and it's like, you know what? I've been using this format for I think like 14 or 15 years now. I have never once intentionally done a digital expand. It's always been an accident.
Right.
So that accident is being counted as, oh, that's engagement. No, it's a mistake, right? So that's a pretty big difference, in engagement versus a mistake. It's like, no, no, no. I did not want to do a digital expand. It happened because I clicked and I hit the wrong button.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's like a lot of this stuff, and the automation that it thinks you want. Oh, do you want to do this? No. Oh, do you want to do that? No, I don't. Leave me
oh yeah.
alone.
Yeah.
Help me
Well, yeah.
write. No.
And you're seeing that in the LLMs now. They're encouraging you to engage more, and they're like, "Hey, you want to do this, that, that? Does that want an image?" I'm like,
Right,
"No,
because they want the
not,
engagement.
not really."
Well, because you think about it, these big guys are losing money on this stuff. I mean, there's no way that they're not losing money, right? Like
Yeah.
OpenAI, Microsoft, Google, Anthropic, they're hemorrhaging money because they want engagement. They're trying to win this battle. They know this is the battlefront, so they'll just burn money as fast as they can
Yep.
to get you to stay there. But they're forgetting that we can leave. Like,
Well, that's the thing. I mean, they probably made a mistake setting the bar so low. They wanted adoption. Now everything's $20 a month, and now I got
right,
it's like it's like my
right.
streaming services. I have a Hulu, a this, a that, a
Oh,
whatever. Driving me
It's
crazy.
it's the Wild West, man. It's like I remember the old days when it was a little simpler, and now it's just like, all right, where is this NBA game on, and what do I have to do? So I have to go to Amazon to watch this football game. What is happening? What?
Yeah, it
It's
is.
it's too much, man. But it's going to be weird. I think, like I say, the big guys, they are hemorrhaging cash in the hopes of securing this battleground, this land, like it's Eastern Ukraine or
Yeah.
something. But by the time it's all said and done, I think all the buildings are going to be blown up. So it's like, what's the point?
Yeah, I guess only time will tell. Well, Eric, this has been an amazing discussion. So, how do people find you and get a hold of you if they want to, and check out some of your services or DM radio? What's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, info@dmradio.biz comes right to me. Just Google DM Radio. We're on YouTube. We have 507 videos, I think, there now of the last
Jeez.
6 or 7 years. And we're all over the place. So send me an email, info@dmradio.biz or info@insideanalysis.com, and we'll get you on the show.
Awesome. Well, Eric, well, thank you. We could talk all day, but our time is up. So I appreciate you joining the Data Faces podcast. And until next time,
Thank you, buddy. Take care.
cheers.